Hmm.
Greetings, everybody. We're going to just banter for a moment or two here. I'm here with Fred Newman, and welcome to the Eavesdropping on Animals book launch party, the online version. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you, Fred, for being willing to do this.
I am so happy to be with you.
I've been looking forward to this for a while, so I'm so thrilled that you're willing to play along.
Well, if the book completely knocked me out, so it's just a joy to be, with the author. It's wow, what a
Well,
labor of love, and it's
yeah.
yeah,
For
yeah.
sure. And it was a treat to interview you and include you in it because I think a lot of the lessons that come out of your work are so helpful for helping people get back to the natural world.
Hmm. It is as yeah. It is about that, just stopping and listening.
Yeah.
That you're so perfectly in tune with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Fred. Well, if you're just
Yeah.
joining us, it's myself, George Buman, with Fred Newman, and the official online release launch party for eavesdropping on animals, which it just went public today
Oh,
in
wow.
North America. It'll be out in Europe and such in about a month, and then and I think in Australia maybe a little bit after that. But if you're just tuning in now, let us know where you're tuning in from. I know we got a few folks that are probably international. Go down to the bottom there, and you'll probably see the chat button. You can click that and let us know where you're tuning in from. If you've gotten a copy of the book already, what you think of it. And we're just happy to have you. Thanks so much for joining us. We're just going to let a few more minutes pass here just so folks can file in. But it's myself, George Buman, with Fred Newman, and this is just such a treat. Such a
Yeah.
treat.
Yeah. For well, how long have we known each other? Probably like 2 years, maybe.
Maybe it seems like forever, but
I
and we
know.
still haven't met in person, which it blows my mind that we haven't been in the same space. But
You
our
know what? That never crossed my mind because the conversations went so deep, so fast that I just like, well, I did. Oh yeah, we haven't been in the same room. This is as close as we've gotten.
It
Yeah.
is. It
Yeah.
is. We're
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
remedy that, but it's a treat that others get to spend this time with us too. I'm really
By the
looking
way,
forward to
what I'm
this.
drinking here, this is ordinary water with a scoop of mentholatum.
Ah.
It opens up your sinuses. Yeah. No, it's not really. I'm just killing time here.
Thanks, Fred.
Yeah.
Thanks for helping out. Well, thank you all. We've got folks
Thank
from
you. Yeah.
Santa Cruz. We've got folks from South Dakota, Arizona, Montana, um, a
Wow.
whole bunch of places all across the country. Oregon, Illinois, Idaho, um, Vermont. Yeah, this is a treat. Colorado. Thank you all for joining us, and let's dive in here. I'll just first off say we're slated for about an hour. Fred and I will have a banter back and forth over matters related to the book. We're gonna make time for your questions as well, and so if you would like to ask us a question, we'll get to those toward the end. And there is a Q&A button, I believe. Yes, on my screen, it's at the bottom and it's like third from the right. If you have a bona fide question you would like to have answered by one of us or both of us, please put it in there because that's where we'll reference those questions when the time comes. And this is just really fun.
my, my wife, who is in publishing all her life, she's been there. She said, "Hold up the book, hold up the book." That's what she whispered to me. It is an amazing book. And I'm very happy to just talk to you about it because I haven't read a book that I've been so enthusiastic about in years and years. Yeah.
Well, that means a lot, Fred. Thank
Yeah.
you. I take that as high praise. I appreciate it very much. And I really appreciate, I'll give a shout out to Julie Zikafus, who wrote a wonderful review of the book in the Wall Street Journal this past weekend. Thank you, Julie. I don't know if you're logged on with us here, but that'll help a lot more people enter these conversations of nature. Um, Before I introduce Fred, I just want to say thank you to a few folks because, as many of you probably know, creating a book is not a one person endeavor by any stretch. And I first off want to thank Jenny and young George. They have been my support system through this whole process, and and a lot of you have experienced in your own life probably. It's great to be able to lean on someone to have dinner cooked when you're out there laboring away trying to do edits and all of those things. This book was, I actually kept track, Fred. I don't know if it was a good thing or a dangerous thing to do, but if you tallied up all the hours I just spent writing, it was 1,305 hours and 50 minutes. And that's not including any of the pitch material writing and none of the post, kind of the end editing sort of thing. And that was across, I think it was 2 years, 1 month, and 15 days.
I
But
was
we've
going to say
been
in dog years, that's something that's still impressive.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Very
Wow.
much so.
Wow.
Yeah, and my mom, I want to thank my mom, my late father, and my late grandfather, my mom's dad. Very, very supportive folks over the years. I really wouldn't be here without them, and so many other folks that I acknowledge in the book. And there's plenty of uh, others out there that there just wasn't room for. So know that I'm thinking of you and have you in my heart. I really, really appreciate that. I can't say enough about Jane Billinghurst. She's been my editor. In fact, she's the one that started this whole ball rolling. I had inklings of doing a book, and Jane saw something we did online and said, "Hey, have you thought of doing a book about this?" And she really got the ball rolling and with Greystone Books, and I can't thank her enough. Her wisdom, her patience, and everything associated with editing a first time author. Made it an incredible experience. And everyone else at Greystone Books, really can't thank them enough. Rob, Megan, Emily, Natalie, the whole gang there associated with press and publication and so on. And of course, my friend John Young, who wrote the foreword. Thank you, John. I think you may be out there. It was a real honor, and you've taught all of us so much about animal language and communication. It was a treat to have you pitch in there as well. And of course, I always want to thank the wild ones because they're so often left out of these human conversations. It really was the beaver, the muskrat, the eshna, the dragonflies. It was Dytiscus, the diving water beetles, and so many other creatures. Bear 263 and 399 and all the different wolves, 21 and 40. Those non-human beings were my very best teachers that made this book possible. And of course, the folks who tended the land and those creatures long before I ever joined this earth. So thank you to all of you. And I want to introduce you, Fred. This is a treat. And if you don't know Fred's face, you know his voice. And I don't want to embarrass you, but I'm going to have to tell folks who don't know how amazing you are. If you saw the movie Gremlins, if you saw Who Framed Roger Rabbit, if you took part in watching the series called Doug on Nickelodeon, if you listened to Prairie Home Companion with Garrison Keillor, you know Mr. Newman's work. His voice and voices and sound effects. Before I even knew his name, I was like, this guy's good. This guy's really good. We're going to have to meet someday. I was sure it was never going to happen, but I'm glad we had a mutual friend and our mutual friend, Jerry. And if Jerry, if you're listening, thank you for making this connection between Fred and I. This has been magic, and I'm glad to have you here. And so why don't we dive in and just talk about the book a little bit? Some of folks...
I want to say something about your thank yous, because I looked at in the back of the book, 30 pages, there's acknowledgments, and there's like a bibliography. This is so researched, and it's 30 pages. So that's 10% of the book is just thanking people, which is, I think, such a great place to be. Because you pull, and then you first thing you did is thank the animals for guiding you here. But that's the genius of your listening and your ability to do that. So that when I first met you in a not a line like this, just a phone call, and you did a couple of sounds. I've never heard anybody do that, because I do cartoon sounds. You do you've make the animal come alive, which is extraordinary. You've listened so much. It's about that receiving. So I'll go ahead. Why don't you start? I didn't mean to take over for
No, no. Well, Fred is here. You know, really, I propositioned him here and said, Fred, would you be a guest host on this? And because it can't be just me, and it's way more fun when we get to do these things together. And so Fred has a few questions, and we just want to talk about the book. And some of the folks listening here probably have read some. Many probably have not read any yet. So maybe it'll just whet your appetite for what's coming down the pike. Like I said, it just released in North America today. Amazon, I guess the statistics show up there. It was #1 in the wildlife category and #3 in ecology, and I think that is a good sign that it's finding some homes, and I hope it finds a lot more. So I don't know. I'll turn a little of this over to you, Fred, because I want this to be a conversation.
Well, that part of you have this grasp of nature, science, and art. It's seldom that you see someone can put all that together so well. That the fact that you're a sculptor as well, and to have, I've never seen it live, but it's beautiful. You notice things. Someone gave me that compliment just recently, and I went, "Oh, maybe that is." I was were you an odd child? Were you? Were you? Because I'm speaking from myself, because I noticed things because I was kind of outside watching. I was listening and watching. And
Yeah,
I had my own. I've got a little bit of spectrum stuff going on, and dyslexic, so I
yeah,
couldn't order things very well, but sound did.
yeah.
Sound is time based as opposed to light, which is instant. So you boom,
Right.
and so do you? What kind of child were you? What? How did you grow up?
You know, I grew up in a rural place, so and there weren't a lot of kids around, so nature was my playmate.
Mm,
Really, that's where I went to after school, before school, and it was sort of just what I did to keep busy. And lo
yeah.
and behold, it sort of sucked me in ways I didn't really realize at the time that I I still follow to this day.
Mhm.
So and I guess the big draw initially was I was fascinated with things I could have a conversation with. Like there was,
Ah,
so there were ducks and geese and deer and turkeys and just that magic of being able to have a back and forth across the species
how
divide.
early did that happen? And do you remember one of the first times that you communicated?
I don't actually. I think I probably was like a lot of kids. We just make noises, fart
Mhm.
noises, bird noises, pig noises, horse noises. We just do that until somebody tells us to stop, and that's not
Mhm.
becoming of a proper human being. And I just kept at it.
Did you, how about when you got a response back that was it wasn't them just stopping and looking at you, but they actually, reacted in some like, what the,
Yeah,
who is that? What's that? Yeah. Do you
yeah.
remember when that was? Or was that an aha moment at all?
You know, actually, one of the early ones was in just started just copying, but I actually learned how to call our largest rodent in North America, the beaver, just from
What?
listening to them chew. So as they would feed, they would hold a stick like a piece of corn on the cob,
Hmm.
and they'd start at one end and they'd go, and they'd roll it, and they'd go down and they're peeling the bark off, right? So I was just, as part of experiencing it, I was started mimicking it, and all of a sudden this beaver swims up to me. And of course then it
Wow.
slaps its tail and scares the tar out of me, but I get wet, get
Yeah,
splashed and all, but
yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
that was an aha moment. It was like, oh my gosh, this is more than just making sounds. This is a back and forth.
Yeah, we have a beaver on the pond just to my left that has been the scourge of. I mean, I'm determined. I'm going to live at peace, wrapping trees, and I put pipes under the dam. And but it is about the sound. If you can still the water, they can't hear the water going.
Yeah.
then you can live safely with a beaver. And otherwise, our basement gets 3 feet of water when it rains. Like, so it's a constant battle. If you, he's actually taken the lawn furniture, like
Hmm.
a glider chair, wooden, and chewed it up. Tried to pull the water. I pulled it back up because it was still working. The next thing I knew, it is built into the dam. And it's now right at that door because I was so just like picked it up and all the parts of the glider are still there, but he chewed off the arm and it's like I thought I was going to fix it back, but I never fixed it. But that sound is exactly right.
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone even think about. I never thought about imitating that,
Yeah.
but yeah, going to the club, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
amazing. I
Yeah.
that's I'm not sure if other people might just like with the dropping to sleep, but that to me that's like, oh, that's crazy. Uh
Well, that's, I guess that's, back toward you. I'm losing my earphone here. Um, when someone has observed closely. You can hear
mm,
the nuances and the things they pick out if they've put in that time means they've immersed themselves. And in that space, it's just, I think with AI and so much these days, I think we will continue to crave, and perhaps more so, real experiences.
hmm
And there's
hmm
nothing more real than nature because it doesn't care how much money you make, who you know, where you live, none of that matters. And in the natural world, when you start sifting into just listening to simple sounds and maybe even mimicking them or jotting them down on a scale if you're musically oriented, it it pulls that outside in a way
Yep.
that surprises us, I think, in the ways it adds to our lives.
Now I'm looking at the cows behind you. Are
Hmm.
those buffalo or cows?
Those are
I can
bison.
see.
Yeah, that's
No,
the
those are bison.
photo
Sorry, I
Jenny
didn't mean
took.
to insult them. I'm sorry. Uh, the that looking at that picture, you can take that whole thing in an instant. But when you're hearing that and you hear the space that one thing I do with people, I do sort of lectures for kids and organizations and so forth about sound, is that uh, you know seeing is believing, sound is feeling, and but it also it is our basic protector. So if someone scares you, this is not going to scare you. That's not going to scare you. Or maybe that boo is going to scare you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go to your brain. It comes up your brain stem and goes right at the bottom of your spine. So you're the next thing you know, your eyes are open, your adrenaline's going, and you're running in place. But someone said boo, that it's and what I tell kids, I said, okay, now look at me, and you do this for me. Look at me and open and close your eyes. Open and close your eyes. All right. And don't use your hands. You don't have to use your hands, right? Now, I want you to do the same thing with your ears. You can't because it's too important. Your life depended always on your ears. It still does. So when you're sleeping, you're listening because and you hear the bump in the night. Or the beaver eating a corn
Eating your
cob.
lawn chair.
Yeah, eating a lot. Yeah, spinning it around. Yeah, yeah.
But it's so true.
Yeah.
And I love the way you framed it in one of our conversations. And I couldn't help but include it in the book because, obviously you had dyslexia, you have other things, and you said sound ordered things. But I
Yeah.
even more so loved that the way you framed it in the sense that sound um, is here and now. Sound organizes the world. Um, but that we think, we respond to the environment with the totality of our being, our soma, as I think the way you framed it. And that was,
That that's right. That is exactly that's what I've come to feel. Uh, that I don't think with this. I definitely when I'm connected, I'm exercising. I feel it's not when I'm necessary, but just the
yeah.
notion of sitting in a place and what I call sound is touch at a distance. So
Ooh,
it's actually
I
vibrations
like that.
coming in and
Yeah.
touching the most sensitive, the membrane in your body is right there, and it's hitting on both sides. So it tells you where to look when, and
Yeah.
if you stop and listen. So I'm seeing the buffalo behind you, but I'm not there. But if you sent me a tape of that, what that sounded like with the water going by, and I don't know. Can you do buffalo? Oh yeah,
It's the bulls at this time of year.
wow.
Yeah,
And the lower register is carried. The
it
more
does.
than yeah, it doesn't disperse. Wow, yeah,
And it's
that's
almost sub sound. Some of that stuff when they're in fact when their first year here, there was a fellow from the Smithsonian recording bison sounds because they were not too dissimilar from elephant vocalizations, and that some of them were really low frequency. And of course, you may know, those listening, that those low frequency sounds travel much higher, or further rather, than high frequency sounds, that break down when they hit leaves and grass and things like that. So they're potentially communicating over big distances with those low rumbles and things.
mhm. Yeah, and actually, and you watch, well, I've been in a few earthquakes, but when
Mm,
anything, dogs, everybody gets low. Everybody gets low. I mean, I've
mm,
seen cats just flatten when they hear that, and hearing it in a hotel, and you hear that low frequency, and it it it, you just, it's the scariest thing. That's why they have, sense around with the woofers under the seat and all that sort of stuff. Um, and actually, in working in film and doing sound in film, that is such a lesson in working with people who really know how to make, what is it going to make, your flesh crawl. And usually it involves low noises, and then you compare that to the high scream,
yeah.
then you're just, everything's waiting. When it happens, it's yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I
um,
got to tell one on you because
oh,
this is so cool. And I didn't know this until we had a conversation some while back, that if you come to Yellowstone and you go to Old Faithful and the visitor center that's newly been revamped in the recent years, if you walk in and you hear the low frequency sounds and the gushing of water, that's not the ground. That's not water. That's Fred Newman.
you know
And that is the coolest thing on the planet. I took my mom there her last visit, and I'm like, "Do you hear those sounds, Mom? That's my friend Fred."
yeah, a museum came up. The people who do, and they were out of Boston, I think. They said they're redoing this thing, and we heard you do something. Could you do the sound we're having problems getting the sound of Old Faithful 5 miles below the ground. Could you? I said, yeah. He said, but we want you to do it with your mouth because we think that'll be better storytelling.
Hmm.
And so there's a little lever that you go up and down with, and I think it's 5 or 6 or 7 layers that starts out with just tectonic plates, which is not unlike the beaver. So, and I dropped it down about 5 or 6 octaves, so you just feel this. Then you get up one more layer, and you start, it's water hits it, so it gets super stinky. And it goes on over. And the hardest was to do it erupting. There's so much. So I had to do like 25, 30 different layers of just different kinds of spray and water.
Oh,
Yeah. And I had to hose off after doing that. But yeah, that was when I don't know why I wasn't thinking about that. And you're sitting very close to where that is. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, and that
But
sort of leads a little bit into, why I wrote the book was because I wanted people who couldn't come here to get some of what we get to share in classes and out in the park together. When folks come here, not everybody can come here, for all kinds of reasons, and that early
traffic,
thinking of
traffic, traffic backing up during the
that's one
summer.
of them. Yeah, you
Yeah, yeah.
need to get away from the roads, and you need to
Mhm,
find quiet. And there's not, silence is pretty much extinct these days.
mhm,
And we don't realize how much it impacts. It's not just annoying for a lot of other species. It keeps them from doing the essentials in life, which is is tough. It's tough on them.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Yeah, the the book is it was so great in that what I was going to say this the part that you also do in the book, in addition to having extraordinary, research that you've done, personal research, but and the quotations and the drawing from a lot of really, really smart, brilliant sound people and engineers and all sorts of things that you have, is that you're telling stories. You reveal those sound. It's some of the best storytelling I've ever heard, and not just about sound, but about the motivations that start the sound. And
mhm.
that's because I come at it from storytelling, and that's where when there was a old guy that used to it would tell me stories, and he said he's sitting beside me. He said, you wanna a lady came in with a blue wrap skirt on and a dog on a leash into this grocery store in LaGrange, Georgia, and she he said, I'm gonna make that dog go to the window and bark. You believe me? And I said, no, sir, you can't do that. So he goes, face didn't move, nothing. He did that in the back. I'm sure you can do that. But it's drawing in air. He did that. That dog broke loose from the thing, ran over to him and did this, like this. And then he went, right, and then he went, and the dog, like, and ran to the window and started barking at the window. And I went, oh, Daddy, you can fool a dog, you pretty good. Yeah. So I went, how do you do that? And you inhale rather than exhale.
Yeah.
So yeah, but you figured that out. You didn't have someone teaching you how to do that. You did it with your own ears, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes I have had mentors who would, a friend of my grandfather's who was a champion level duck caller. So I'd go hang
Oh,
out with him a little bit at times. I just cold called the state turkey calling champion at a certain point and met him at a show. And there were other people like that. I didn't have one mentor. I just kind of cherry picked and grabbed and learned where I could. And I guess more than anything, I hope I hope I saved somebody some of that time because it took me a long time to learn a lot of the things that I poured into that book because it still makes me lament a little that we're not at the the current end of a few thousand generations of that level of storytelling and tie to the natural world.
mm,
Some
mhm.
of the folks that John Young's worked with in Africa, and just the level of specificity and awareness that they have by receiving those gifts, not just directly from the environment, but like you're saying, Fred, the storytelling element is as human as anything. Like that's the way my grandfather taught me that lesson, and I've been teaching and speaking storytelling longer than anything, and he was
Mhm.
really my hero. He could, I'll tell you, he we were on a cruise once. It was his birthday. He always had wanted to go to Alaska, and he never got to go. So the whole family pitched in, paid our way, my way, his way, and my uncle's way. So three generations of us, and we all went to Alaska. It wasn't quite the trip he had thought of. He wanted to do dog sled and roughing it in the bush. But we sat with the same two couples every night on the cruise, same table. And there's a couple from Cardiff, Wales, and then there was a couple from Mexico City, Mexico, with their adult daughter. And after that trip, my grandfather was just my grandfather. He's telling stories. He was just being himself, and he never would have said he was a master storyteller. But that daughter of that Mexican couple came up to me at the end of the cruise, and she said, "Your grandfather's stories were the highlight of my dad's trip." And it blew me
Wow.
away because her dad didn't speak English.
Oh,
And it just still
wow.
hits me to this
Wow.
day that he was so powerful in his storytelling that he broke through the language barrier.
Yeah,
And
there was an old black guy in that store I was talking about who said to me, "There's more truth in a story than there ever was in a fact."
oh,
And
that's neat.
I, I'm I get sort of knuckles from I can't yeah that but that's what you
Yeah.
did in this book is that if you presented it the way you can read the science, but you can read the Science Times, you'll hear about the elephant hearing with their feet and stuff, but you're telling you told it with these really glorious stories with a vocabulary and a sonic sound that you're using, sibilants
Yeah.
just to get a piece of the wind that you're hearing. Is that's the brilliance of the book that I've never seen before or heard before.
Well,
It's a
thank
big
you.
thank you. No,
Well,
it's
I appreciate
extraordinary.
you saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's, I guess, in one way that I went through, some of you may know, I went through my academic training in the sciences, bachelor's and master's degree in wildlife ecology. And I came out of that loving everything I'd learned, but because of my history and storytelling, lamented so much that the rest of the world had no clue what we were doing
Mm,
or the
mm,
importance of it. And that all this amazing information is being generated by the scientific community and nobody knows, or it isn't
it,
known in the right capacity or ratio of knowing, what's important, and always this search for truth, whether it's art or science, and they're very much aligned that way. I think far more than most people realize these days.
yeah. No, you're quite right. I probably, yeah, and your mother was an artist, right? Yeah,
Sculptor,
she a
yeah.
sculptor. So to have that sort of, bringing something out of thin air and sculpting and making that real. But you didn't go for that first. You went for, oh, I mean, maybe you did. Maybe you were quite active in that.
I
Yeah,
loved art and I loved science. I loved
yeah,
nature,
yeah,
I guess, more
yeah,
more
yeah.
specifically, however I could get it. And you do art too. I know.
Yeah. Well, but not like you do. I mean, you're doing 3D where the buffalo is twisting. It's like, how you catch that with the fur and like, oh my goodness. But it takes whatever it takes to listen, it takes so much more to capture that. That's light in a bottle. It's oof.
Hmm.
Yeah. Uh,
Well,
well,
the real beauty's out there. That's, I always maintain. People, I sculpt a lot in the park, outdoors, in front of the animals, and people say, "Oh, that's beautiful." It's like, well, no, look,
yeah.
that's the real beauty. That elk, that bison, that wolf, that bear, that's the magic right there. I'm just trying to speak to my experience with it.
Oh, wow. But there's also in your work in the book, it does feel like it, it- you're on a mission. And I don't know if you voiced it to yourself, but it is a mission. It just feels like I want to, out of joy, like I want to share this with others and show them,
Yeah.
like, here's a flashlight, or here's you big megaphone that you put to your ear, uh, do that. But it's rare to actually get someone that a book can actually capture that, and you have.
I tried because I guess if there is a mission, I've just received so much good out of my experiences in the natural world that
Mm.
it's something everybody should have. It's like, it's free passes to the gym forever. It's, unlimited
Yeah.
trips to the psychotherapist. It's unlimited, you name it, whatever your basic needs are. I think people think that connecting to nature is just about bugs and plants and birds and things. When you, and I know you know this, we've talked about it, when you learn to listen to Mother Nature, because it's mostly quiet. Mother
Mhm.
Nature rarely shouts, it's almost always in a whisper. And when you still yourself and slow yourself down and are able to listen to that, when you come back to the human dominated world, you listen to your kids better. You're a
Mm.
better coworker, you're a better boss. You don't jump to conclude, you've brought yourself down. Your nervous system is in sync with something that's more balanced. I actually gave a talk once, and I had a fellow come up to me as animal language talk, and He came up and he said, your talk is exactly what I did for my career. That's what I made my whole career on. And he was an investment banker. He said, that pattern identification and recognition that you're talking about used in nature is exactly what I did. I was finding the patterns and everyone else was missing, and that's where I put my investments. So I think
Boom,
people
boom.
underestimate the power of vitamin N, to use a
Mhm.
Richard
Yeah,
Louv
yeah.
term, to enrich our lives across the board.
Well, you bring up and we've talked about this, off camera before, but uh, that that the metaphors or the patterns of metaphors, whether it's words or and the metaphors, that's the great teacher. The metaphors, when in seeing patterns, actually the new research I just was reading about is IQ is less about, we always thought it was clock speed. It's not. It's about recognizing patterns.
Hmm.
And so that that the old movie, this house is to a dog as bump. But I hated those things, but that's a measure of like seeing patterns, and
Mm-hmm.
that's and so to just sit and watch so the patterns form in front of you.
Yeah.
That's, and whether it's looking at ripples or whether it's hearing birds or the dogs down the street, the patterns. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it's better than anything we could ever concoct. This has been in the making for millions, if not billions of years. And there is no set number of levels. You can't conquer it. You can't know it all. It just goes
Mm-mm.
on forever, which is like yesterday morning, I was sitting out on this spot I call the Sitting Rock. I mention it in one of the chapters. And it's just a beautiful place to sit to watch the sun come up. And yesterday morning, I suspect there could have been a bear down in the creek right below me.
Mm.
And I
And
don't know
how
for
did you?
sure, but
Yeah.
the magpies flew in and they did this dive right there, flying along, and then they dove right in and they started going, instead of yak yak, they were going yak 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 yak. I'm like, they don't do that randomly. Like,
Wow.
nature is on such a shoestring budget, that
Mm.
calorie economy in a sense. They don't waste it, right? So I'm like, something's going on there. It could have been something. It could have been a bobcat, could have been a coyote, I don't know. But it could have been a grizzly bear. And I got to wondering a little bit later, the robin starts chirping. And I'm like, there's some, I'm not alone here. And I guess it's,
Mhm.
to
Mm.
me, growing up, that was one of the coolest things is I could be by myself, but I realized with time I was never alone.
I, I,
So
I would,
you,
yeah, I hear you. I
yeah,
identify with that.
this sound, this other beings, and this being able to know sometimes stuff in a circle of a couple miles radius, just by paying attention to those patterns that you're talking about, Fred. Like, our,
Yeah,
our brains are wired for that. We don't have to know all the
exactly.
birds. You don't have to know all the plants. You just have to be out there. We're wired for it.
And you're it's the environment reaching out and touching you, literally touching you, and
Yeah.
you just got to calibrate off that. You can feel it, and
Yeah.
that having now been over half my life living in New York City from small town in Georgia, uh, the difference in sound and the aggressive
Mm,
sounds and so forth, and then you see, with the
yeah.
fragmentation of metaphor, of storytelling, with storytelling's now 3 seconds. Commercials are just, like,
Yes.
and the commercial, the way, thank goodness we can slow down and do what, an hour on talking this way. That's the upside, but the downside is that you got to get through 1,000 distractions to get there. And for
Yeah.
someone like me, that is so hard. So I just sort of sit and rock, like in front of, like, oh my gosh. Uh,
But you do those listening breaks, and that was one of the things I
yeah.
loved and included in that one chapter where you're playing a cameo role. That idea of a listening break is so powerful yet so simple.
It really does.
Can you tell folks who don't know yet or haven't read it, what is a listening break for you?
Well, and it varies. Where I am, but just stopping wherever it is and doing it 2 or 3, 4 times a day, and sometimes more because I have to. And
Inside or outside?
it can be anywhere now, but it used to be I have to go outside. And for when I really discovered it was when a tree fell in the pond, and it fell, and it was a beaver. It took the tree down, but the tree, the whole top of the tree is sitting about 6 or 8 feet off the pond. The rest of it's holding up. And so I went and cut the limbs off so I could walk out there precariously. And I put our kitchen chair, like just a red kitchen chair. I mounted it on the end of that tree and cut off the branches here. Now I'm sitting above a 6 acre pond, about 8 feet off the ground, and I would crawl out there and just listen. And there's this is all glacial. This is a glacial valley we live in,
Yeah.
so the sound comes down, and it's a lens, an auditory lens, because it's kicking up. So I'm getting it coming this way, and this is like what you hear birds in the morning. It's like 2 or 3 times more powerful. Now, what it is, it's like water washing over you. And I could feel that. That was when I really realized that you just got to stop wherever you are. And even New York City, that you'll hear the pitches and the little coos and the flutters and hey buddy. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Well, that one clipped out, but
yeah. That's the irony of this thing, that I can't do loud sounds or clips that with the way we're set up here. But yeah. Anyway.
well,
So
I think that's one
am
of
I
the huge
rambling?
things. You make a great point. I think a lot of people think that, okay, nature is out there. It's somewhere beyond me. I can't reach it. It's in national parks. It's in game preserves. It's on crown land. But I think your point with there is a beautiful one. Is that nature is everywhere. There is wildness in every nook and cranny if you slow down to look
You
and
got to
listen.
look at. There's one other thing that hit me going from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day.
Mm,
And we just got through that. That um, that it struck me in this way. I was just looking out at the beaver and out there and going, wait, they're the indigenous animals here, and we've been conquering conquistadors of putting in our subdivisions, and but they're still there. We do have bear here, and we have raccoons. That the bear actually took our bird feeder and just bent the whole 10 foot pole. Rolled steel. Just you go, oh, just for some
yeah,
bird seed. I mean, but
yeah,
how we're invading there. So stopping and seeing what the indigenous, I want to say humans because they feel like humans, but what the animals and what the wind does to that, how they react, and listen to
hmm
yeah, yeah.
yeah. You're
I'm
absolutely
rambling.
right.
Sorry, I don't mean to do that, but
Well, and it's just that connection through them to that place. I think that's what I enjoy most is, so we jet set around so much and we don't really know our homes, if we even
yeah,
have a home. Some people feel it's a sad one, but a lot of people say they don't feel like they have a home. But you'll hear it sometimes when they come to Yellowstone. They say, I feel like I've finally found home.
mm,
And I think that's the nervous system realizing what wild nature offers us is this sense of being and belonging that we don't find in the world that's dominated and focused entirely on us.
hmm
And
yeah, very much. And in the Wall Street Journal uh, article talked about a transcendent moment that you wrote about.
mm-hmm.
Can you describe that?
Yeah, and this is an encounter that is not rare. I think it's the encounter of everyone who puts the time and energy into really connecting with the more than human beings around us. And that is, in essence, it goes off the charts, far beyond what anyone can really describe or tell you about with words or science or anything. But you know it when you experience it. and I had this encounter with these magpies where I'd kind of gone out and just kind of done this meditative walk where I spent, I don't know what it was, an hour or 2 hours moving 30 feet and just seeping fully into my senses. So I was hearing everything, the magpies, the sparrows, the jets, the wind in the cottonwood trees. I was feeling the sun on me, but almost to the point, and this is where the words start to get clunky, is like they were passing through me. The sensation of just transparency almost. And out of that, the animals started reacting differently. And ultimately, my watch alarm went off. And I was like, oh, my, it was like the most heinous sound on the planet. I'm whacking my pocket, trying to shut it off. And I finally do manage to. And it's telling me, get back to the office, dummy. You still got work to do. But I didn't want to. But I begrudgingly walked up the stairs past our greenhouse toward the house. And here are these magpies, 4 of them, picking around in the grass right next to the sidewalk. And they don't let you anywhere near them. 50 yards is as close as you get before they take off. And yet they stayed there. And I kept walking. And they stayed there. I walked some more. And they just stayed there. And I got to the point where I was standing so close that if I had fallen over, Fred, I would have crushed them. And I could hear these sounds that you hardly ever get to hear out of them at close range, just because they're so far away. I could see in the grass where they were picking through things. And I was just like, do I not exist here? Like, what's going on? And in the moment, I had the thought of, no one's going to believe this. This is so cool. All 4 of them looked up at me and they took off. I didn't move. I didn't do anything other than all I knew that I did was I thought differently. Is a thought a thing? They responded to me in a way as if it was. Science will probably have a different explanation of that, but the lived experience of that it was otherworldly. Like, what was going on there? And I've had lots of encounters like that in later years, and I had some before, that they might last a second or 2 or 4 or 5, and yet you remember those for the rest of your life.
Yeah, you say in the book that the greatest fear of all animals, I think, I'm misquoting a little bit, are humans. We're the greatest fear. And that the natural environment is much less threatening than humans, of course. Yeah. But when you stop, and I think, maybe that taking, would you say 30 minutes or 2 hours? I forget how long it took you to go across that path, but you became just another part of the environment. This is not the way humans act. Because right. Humans are going to move through fast and brashly and with no regard and just walk on what that you weren't the scariest thing on earth. Humans.
We hunt the prey and we hunt the predators too, and even our nature loving selves. The way we conduct ourselves usually is actually really frightening, or it transmits a message that we're bringing other dangerous stuff with us. We might have hawks or something following us to pick off birds that we disrupt, but it doesn't have to be that way. And that's the real revelation for me in a lot of cases, is you can change that equation. You can change that right now. You can literally walk out the door and do a couple things, and the book talks about this, and you can watch the dynamic change. And as you continue to do those things in different ways, you will have those experiences, and you will have those meaningful encounters in ways that only you can have. Someone else who hasn't done the homework you've done comes along with you, it doesn't happen, because they always gauge off the lowest common denominator.
We should open up to questions.
We should. Let's do that. Yeah. Thanks, Fred. All right. Aaron says, I visit the buffalo in the rehab about twice a week. He makes these low murmuring sounds. He also walks to the fence where I am and parked. He's on the other side. However, when I first visited, he was silent but observant. Now he makes a few low sounds. I'm wondering if he's trying to communicate with me. I talk to him, I sing, so I think energetically we are friends, or at least acquaintances. What do you make of something like that? Have you had encounters like that, Fred?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They're where you find that the animal curious. You know, they're if, but it
Yeah.
takes stillness and it takes non-human behavior. You just behave like a plant. You know, just sort of stand there and don't let them approach you, not approach them. You know,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Yeah, I was just on a podcast interview the other day, and we were talking about related things, and one of them was one of these techniques to kind of defray this humanness that we sort of carry along as baggage is pretend you're eating a plant. Walk up to a tree and grab the tip of that twig, and you know turn your attention away from the deer or the squirrel, and out of the corner eye you will often see that the ears drop and the tension in their bodies settle, and they will relax. They will start to vocalize. They
wow.
will move toward you to see what's this guy doing? What's this gal up to? This is they aren't behaving like the normal person, and it's powerful. We even got into.
Wow.
I noticed that squirrels had a different cadence to their step in the leaves in the areas I grew up in upstate New York. I could tell when a squirrel was coming versus a deer. It was ch 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 ch. This the gray
Yeah, yeah,
squirrel,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
ch 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 of the deer, and the sh of the wild turkeys. Scratch, 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 right? And
Wow.
and so, to sort of find that space, like this question did about the buffalo, set your humanness aside and walk like a squirrel sounds, walk like the deer sounds, and they break sticks, they kick stones, like they're doing all that stuff, but they don't scare things the way we do. But yeah, I think you get the point.
Yeah, it's the purpose of our human beings is what we betray ourselves with that. Just
Yeah.
the purpose with we walk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Agreed. Agreed. Let's see. Grab another question here. Um, can we share that quote, Fred? Or more truth in a story than in the fact? I'm a storyteller, but will not borrow it without permission. That's Aaron.
That yeah. I mean that I've used that a lot, and I think it's one of the most truthful things I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a storyteller friend who he grew up in Texas, lives up in this country, but he's famous for saying, "Every story's true. Some of them just haven't happened yet."
I
Sort
love
of
that voice. I love
along
that
those
voice.
lines, yeah. Um,
Wow.
oh, okay. So Richard Schwartz is asking, did your eyes meet with those birds? I'm guessing you're referring to those magpies. Absolutely. Like I was looking right at them. I was looking down on them, from this position of, a towering human being, which in many cases is pretty frightening to small stuff. And yeah, I was unobstructed. I wasn't hiding. I was literally on the sidewalk in the grass right next to me is where those birds were. It was astonishing, and it sifts off into some of these mysterious places, but nonetheless, they are very much real.
Mm.
Um, let's see, Neil. He mentioned the time one week where you heard 50 different birds in northern New York. Oh yeah, so this is a really neat one. I went to visit my aunt and uncle, and I went out as I often do in the morning, wherever I am, and just sat for a while. But it was before light, and it was fascinating because I think we don't give full credence to the power of just one animal or a species being in a certain spot. So, for
Mm.
instance, I had the lay of the land and the different forest types just by sitting there in the dark. A lot of it closed my eyes, but I could hear the barred owl. Oh no, that's a great horn. Sorry.
They- oh man, you get that. Nobody does it that well. That's amazing.
But so I knew in that instance that there was a conifer patch, probably mature forest to the north. I was sitting there and I hear the song of a rose-breasted grosbeak. Well, that's got to be in a logged area. I didn't know that the area, I had I not even been there before? But I could tell that this area was cut over, or there was a lot of break in the understory and the overstory. So I hear you know, the slow, of the rose-breasted grosbeak. And then I hear the teacher, 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 teacher of the ovenbird. So I know that there's mature forest over there as well. I hear a turkey gobble way beyond the rose-breasted grosbeak, and I know there's got to be, it was spring, and there's got to be a grassy area, at least several yards in square footage, for it to display, because it's long enough, it's already on the ground, but it's displaying for the hens. I know that landscape feature exists over there. And just on and on through all these different species I was hearing, each one of them has such narrow, in some cases, very narrow habitat requirements that you can read the land just simply by knowing something's one place versus another. Nisa asks, George, what's your closest encounter with a wolf? I assume you mean a wild one. I've been within a few yards of them, and usually try to give them plenty of heads up that I'm there so they can make a decision. But, there've been times out here on the northern part of Yellowstone in the national forest where we just happen upon one another and, oh, there we are. And the wind's been right, and they've been very close. And I don't worry. A lot of people will ask, well, what happens if you get close to wolves in the night and you're walking a trail on the moon and they howl and enjoy it. They aren't out there to get people. Enjoy that experience, because they're going to move on real quick as soon as they know you're there. Good question. Another question. We've all known people who can approach any dog and the dog wags its tail, yet some have a reverse effect on dogs. How is that? You run into that one, Fred?
Say that one more time.
Yeah, the question was about, certain people can walk right up to any dog and the dog greets them back and is comfortable, and other people, I think we've all seen this to some degree, like the person who doesn't like cats walks in the room, and who's the cat go to? Or, they're reading us, right?
Yeah. I think, like people, I found with animals, if you get them, people that lower their head, they lower their head slowly. You come in slow and you get lower. It's the people who hands will go in the air. Oh, you reach up. That's not going to work with most dogs and or hamsters or whatever. Just you got to come in low, so you're not a threat in that way. Because that's unusual. That's not like all the other human beings or the kid that just right.
Yeah, it's good practice with your pets too. I think that's a wonderful way to improve your relationships with the wild ones, as well as they're operating on a lot of the same etiquette. So letting them come to you. I'm really adamant a lot of the time about not feeding. We feed the songbirds, I think, like you do, Fred, but we don't feed the magpies. We don't feed the deer. What I want to build with them, I want that to be predicated on trust, not extortion. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like I want them to enter into this as equal partners, and when they do, it's touching as anything I know.
Yeah, what I have found is sounds. If you just take it works with babies, it works with dogs, it works with pups. Just so you take an energy, you establish an energy, but you pull it down. So you show them where they can take whatever species it is. For the most part, I'm sure it's not going to work on a snake, but but that it with mammals, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that you recognize them. I think that's a big thing. Is so many people walk right into a room and they don't look down for the cat or the dog or the hamster or whatever it is, and so then understandably are fearful of us. But when you recognize them, that alone a lot of times is enough to start that gestural dialogue, if you want to use that term.
Do you talk about this in your book about dogs having whites to their eyes?
I didn't get into it in the book, or we may have edited it out, but there's a lot that goes on with the eyes. Hmm.
Because the ranking and that we're so close to canines because they're just like humans. They have their alpha whatever,
Hmm.
and the alpha looks, and even the dogs that have the little dots over their eyes. It's
Yeah.
about how they're looking. They're ranking all the time. And they lower their head. All that stuff. A lot
Yeah.
of animals do that.
Yeah.
That yeah, I do, but the whites of the eyes means they can see where you're looking.
Right.
So they
And I can't remember if it ended up making the final edits or not, but like dogs, there's an asymmetry to their tail wag. If I'm remembering it right, I think when they find and meet someone they know, they wag to the right more preferentially, or a
oh
greater
wow.
portion of the wag is to the right. And if this is an unknown dog or an unknown person, the wag goes more to the left. Now, there's a paper, a couple of bits of research on this out there, and I'd have to review it to make sure I got it right. But that, in essence, there's even the tail wag, say nothing of the eyebrows or eye contact. That is communicating things too that we
It,
have grossly overlooked.
did you see the screen that Jeff just put up there that they smell to the left as well?
Hmm,
Oh no, that's interesting.
that's
There-
fascinating.
There's so much. Well, being
Yeah.
left-handed and I've got a lot that always fascinated me about the handing of people.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
Yeah, I did a sculpture of two bears fighting, and a friend of mine who knows bears really well, he's like, "Oh, you got the handedness right," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He says, "They're southpaws. Bears, when they fight, they key up and they swing with their left. They give a left hook or a left swipe, and that's why
wow,
so often injuries to bears' faces who've been in these fights are on the right side. They have torn
wow.
ears on the right. They have scars on the right side of their face because often those bears are left-handed, it seems. All right, one more question here. You ready, Fred? Do one
Yeah,
more?
sure.
All
Yeah,
right. What would you say to people who don't live in wilderness spaces? Can you still interact with nature in a city? What would you say? You've spent a lot of time there in New York.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, sometimes cities are brilliant, and Central Park saved the city, but there are parks all over. And when we don't have parks, people move out of the city. I mean, in those cities where they didn't do that, plowed over it. That parks are, and they bring nature in. There's so much nature. Okay, maybe there's a high proportion of rats to that, but but they're tough. They're yeah, I can. Obviously, they all those animals in the city have the voice of Joe Pesci. What are you gonna do about it, tough guy? Throw me a piece of bread. Come on. Uh, but, but but I see but they are, but particularly like birds, the different, and there's always things moving through,
Yeah.
especially with migrations. And New York is great for that because there's so many that come through there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, yeah, there's nature, but you have to stop, and nothing in the city tells you to stop. Keep going, keep going. Don't sit on the park, but just watch. Even if the just the sort of passing of people, that's nature. There's not. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Absorb the ness of wherever you are. That energy.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. I think in
I know I was
sometimes
rambling there, but never mind.
no, no, not at all. It's proselytizing the truth there, sir. It's true, and in fact, in a lot of ways, I think the city sometimes is even easier to see some of these patterns of animal movement. In nature, wild nature, it's endless diversity, and sometimes that diversity detracts from our ability to actually identify some of the patterns. The pigeons, they come flying out from behind the skyscraper because the peregrine falcon's right behind them. And they're using the human landscape and us sometimes to make their living. And that's one of the things that's important to realize too is if you are going to take that bucket list trip to, let's say, Africa or Antarctica or Scandinavia or Siberia or Alaska, any of these places we think of going to nature, your very best exercise and practice in preparation for that is literally probably within a block or two of your house, because the
Yeah,
patterns that you see and become sensitized to are going to sensitize you to so much more. The same patterns generally unfold everywhere you go. It's going to be just different species. but you can see how those squirrels react in your yard, or those pigeons and things people usually like rats. Oh gosh, those damn things. But in reality, no, they're some of your best teachers because they're close, they're common, and they're going to give you a lot more than you realize. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
at this point, folks are probably, if you haven't gotten a copy of the book, definitely look us
I'll
up.
hold it up.
Oh, thank you, sir. I'll hold mine up as well.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It right now. I mean, and having just reread this, it's I think my favorite book. I'm just loving this, and I'm not saying it because you're sitting there across from me. It operates on so many levels. The storytelling is so good, and you learn a lot. That things make sense in a way. You go, oh, I never realized that. You know,
Thank you.
it's a real it's an eye opener, ear
Thank you.
opener.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And I want as many folks to have that experience. You know, a lot of you probably know book writing is not a high financial return on investment, but it's just so important. It's been meant so much to me that I wanted other people to have this in their, because you can't go back. Once you start to see this stuff, you can never see the world the same way again. You can't not pay attention to these things. So look for it anywhere books are sold. It's just released in North America. It will be out in Europe in about a month, in Australia, I think a little bit after that. Anywhere books are sold, and really support your independent and locally owned bookstores. Those are the folks who help make your communities work and bring you the good reads. If you are in the Montana area, we are having a live in-person opportunity to have books signed, and I'll give a program there at Elk River Books in Livingston, Montana, and that's October 24th, the evening of, and would really love to see you there. And if you can't, you still want one that's signed by me, I'm happy to do that. Please look us up on my website, georgebuman.com or ayellstonelife.com. Either one of those will get you navigated through to that option where I can sign one for you and personalize it, because this is a very personal journey. And if I can be a part of that, I would be greatly honored. And I'm just honored to have you here, Fred. This has been a real treat. Thank you.
Back at you. And we met instantly and went, okay, I understand it. I mean,
I like this guy. I know this guy.
I know this guy. Yeah, thank you. What a joy.
Well, take care, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy the book. Take care.
You're killing me. You're so good. You're so good.
Have a good night, Fred.
Yeah. Good night.